Hello and welcome to this press briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I am Jonathan Beck, Director of Content. It was just less than an hour ago that the army announced for the second time in 24 hours it intercepted a UAV launched from Yemen towards Israel. Earlier this morning, quite early in the AM, two rockets launched from Yemen, from the Houthis in Yemen, crashed in Saudi Arabian territory. And only last night, another failed UAV was launched by the Houthis and intercepted before reaching Israel. No sirens sounded in Israel in any of those instances because basically all those attacks were failed attacks by the Houthis. However, the Houthis have been attacking Israel since October 19, 2023, a mere 12 days after the beginning of so-called Al-Aqsa flood, Hamas cross-border attack against Israel that began the Iron Swords War. And these included the launches of UAVs, ballistic missiles, and also attacks against ships crossing the Persian, Arabian Gulf with goods, either ships with Israeli flags or ships the Houthis believe are related to Israel. Our guest to discuss all these topics today is Oded Ailam. He's a formerly head of counterterrorism department in the Mossad and today researcher at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Hello, Oded, and thank you for joining us and giving us of your time.
Hello, Jonathan, and thank you for having me.
So, obviously, the apex of these attacks was an attack last week on Thursday night, in which a dozen Houthi officials from the top leadership of the organizations were killed. These were characterized by the media as the prime minister and a bunch of ministers. However, it's important to stress the Houthis are not Yemen's recognized government. They're like a self-appointed government of a group that's internationally by many countries considered a terror group. Can you tell us, was this really a breakthrough in intelligence gathering and the targets, considering the attacks on ports and energy infrastructure earlier in the war?
No, I wouldn't say it's an intelligence breakthrough because there wasn't any use of something that we haven't seen before, either technological or on the human side. But we must stress that this is quite a remarkable achievement on behalf of the Israeli intelligence, which consists, of course, the Mossad and the IDF intelligence, because we are talking about a country that is almost 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. And until 2023, it wasn't really on the agenda of the Israeli intelligence services. Not because we haven't anticipated that the Houthis don't really like Israel and perhaps even plan something against the Israel sometimes in the future, but simply because of the fact that we are obliged by limited resources and we had to focus mainly on Iran and on Hezbollah, Hamas, and even Syria at that time. So the thing is that in less than 2 years, we actually established a completely new apparatus that have to deal with a country that we never worked on them before. And we have to build on the technological level and on the human level, and of course on the affiliation and joint ventures with similar or identical security services. Of course, the CIA is the first one, and the American military, and not just the CIA. We have some other moderate Arab countries who are foes to the Houthis, and I can assume that there is some sort of exchange of intelligence with them. Nevertheless, the precision of the targeting the civilian leadership of the Houthis, although it's not the military leadership, and of course it's not Abd al-Malik al-Houthi, who is the villain in the story. He and his brother are the one who are initiating this whole campaign. Nevertheless, he sends a very, very clear message to the top echelons of the Houthis: be careful, beware, we are on your step, and it's a warning that they will definitely take it very, very seriously.
Okay, thank you for this. I've also read an interpretation saying that the attack on Thursday was an Israeli retaliation to a Houthi attack from August 22, during which a missile that for the first time had a cluster bomb type warhead was launched at Israel, even though that was intercepted. So essentially, there's a new policy here of not retaliating when attacks from the enemy hits, but also preemptively sort of retaliating over intentions. So I don't know if it's okay to ask, but can we assume perhaps that beyond Thursday's attack, there are further, let's call it high-level targets that Israel is keeping, for the next escalation, or have we fulfilled, has Israel fulfilled its intel capabilities so far, do you think, on this front?
Israel had abandoned the old formulas of retaliation and proportional retaliation and so on that were established in the conflict between Israel, mainly Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah over the last 20 years. Israel had abandoned this formula and right now is acting very, very much proactive in order to foil any sort of an attempt or even gathering of substantial threats against Israel before they are initiated. So I wouldn't say it's some sort of a formula as Nasrallah has created in the past. It's more or less of trying to achieve some sort of deterrence to the Houthis, because we are not going to step into the Houthis territories. We are not going to send troops. We're not going to try by an air campaign to topple the regime. We are trying to eliminate I would say, the enthusiasm of Abd al-Malik and his tribe, the Zaidi tribe, to export the jihadic, I would say, campaign against Israel and to curb, in a way, their desire to escalate this conflict.
Okay, I understand. Going back to the Houthis' main backer, which is Iran, obviously Israel and Iran had the 12-day war in June, which, according to various reports, has left Iran, militarily at least, depleted by a large number of its ballistic missiles stockpile. And it's been known over the years that Iran is basically the main supplier of the Houthis, and the Houthis are one of the proxies of them. To what degree do they have in Yemen a sort of self-manufacturing capability? Or basically, my question is, has the war with Iran also, indirectly affected the Houthis' capability to replenish?
Absolutely, you're right. The Houthis do not have the capability of, I would say, manufacturing and even reconstruction of ballistic missiles. This is only can be achieved in Iran, not on Houthi soil. What they are capable of is simple drones or all sorts of small devices, small rockets that they can use, which proved to be not very efficient in this campaign. But ballistic missiles, they cannot create and they cannot even moderate those ballistic missiles that they have by their own means, because simply they don't have the technology for that. So by trying to eliminate the Iranian facilities and the Iranian shipments, which we had encountered on a very big shipment, I think it was 2 months ago, deteriorate on a large extent the capabilities of the Houthis to launch substantial amount of missiles at once, or cause or inflict huge damage on Israel. Let's not forget the American also diminished some of their capabilities in the short campaign that was stopped abruptly. I think it was a mistake by the Trump administration to achieve a ceasefire at that time. But nevertheless, they don't have those capabilities like the Iranians, and they are limited in their resources, and they are also limited in the sites that they can use for that end.
So, okay, thank you for this. Regarding this campaign, the American campaign, basically, that indeed ended quite abruptly. As far as I can recall, not considering, the number of bombs or the weight in tons, what America did then was essentially what Israel did up to last Thursday, meaning targeting infrastructure, targeting, big facilities that might affect like the economics of the entire country of Yemen, even not just the Houthis, but not doing what Israel did on Thursday. Is it true that Netanyahu, when he said on Sunday, when he said we are doing what no one has done before us, and this is only the beginning of the strikes, and senior officials in Sana'a, we will get to all of them, is really this is not something that has been done before by any of the forces fighting the Houthis? I mean, just to remind our listeners, which are journalists, I'm sure they're all aware, they have been fighting Saudi Arabia, I think, for about a decade now.
Right. The American had tried once, I think it was in April, to strike some prominent military officials, but they failed in their targeting, and actually they killed some civilians and so on. There was a lot of debate regarding that. I think Israel had expressed, first of all, a strong will, in the sense that we do not shy away from targeting prominent leaders, and which signals to Abd al-Malik Houthi and his top echelons that we are going to get you as well. Abd al-Malik al-Houthi is quite hard as a target because he moves from place to place. He hides in remote places, but nevertheless, Israel proved in the past that we have capabilities. And I think the declaration that is made by Netanyahu will reach its destination, and the understanding that Israel means business, and that if the Houthis will escalate their campaign to a level that is intolerable, Israel will definitely strike very fiercely and aggressively. But I have to say, the Houthis are limited. It's not that they have, capabilities of striking something similar to the Iranians. They don't. And we have diminished a lot of their capabilities. And what they're doing right now is more or less what they are capable of. I can assume that they will also try to increase their attack on civilian ships, tankers, and so on in the Red Sea, in order to disturb international shipments and so on. But they don't have any sort of a magic card that they can pull out as they are at least trying to portray. It's more or less what they have, and they will, of course, try to use it.
This was actually, you preempted my next question. What we've seen since Sunday, the failed UAVs, the failed ballistic missiles, is that there's no magic, there's no like secret bunny in a hat. Or
not that I can recall. I mean,
sometimes there's no known unknown. to
Yeah,
quote.
right, right.
If
And
there's an
another,
unknown, it's a different thing.
exactly, exactly. And there's always a black swan on some type of black swan. But I don't see that they have a supersonic missiles as they claim to have. Of course, they have cluster warheads, but this is something which is not on a very sophisticated technological level. I can't see anything that they can pull out in a sense that it shuffled the cards and total surprise.
Would you say that Israel has any aspirations to create a change in the ground in Yemen, like it maybe didn't succeed, but aspired to create in Iran, sort of to say that the Sunni Yemeni population will rise up against them, or is it just to stop the threat and we have no further, interests there? Does Israel have any bigger aspirations for Yemen?
Israel should have a bigger aspiration for Yemen, and I think the only way to eliminate Abd al-Malik Houthi and his Zaidi clan or tribe is to try to integrate all the opposition that there is still exists in Yemen. And there's quite a lot of opposition. We have the Southern Giant Brigades. They have about 30,000 fighters. We have the Security Belt Forces, the STC. We have the Hadami Elite Forces, about 7,000 fighters. We have the Yemeni International Resistance, and so on. So there is quite a large opposition which is fragmented in Yemen. And let's not forget, there are the Saudis, there are the Emirates who are the enemies. And so the way to conduct this campaign against the Houthis in order to topple them is try by some sort of alliance with the moderate Arab states and of course with the US, which is extremely important player, is to try to topple them the same way that Erdogan did with Giuliani in Syria. Because what Erdogan actually did is to take a super glue and combine all the fractured resistance that were in Idlib in the north and so on, and they simply drove their Toyotas into Damascus and toppled the regime. I'm not saying it's going to happen the same way because the Houthis are far more stronger, but it's possible if the Americans combined with the Saudis and the Emirates, and of course with the support of Israel, will launch such a campaign.
Okay, the big difference though being that Erdogan is a Muslim, and sees himself as an Islamic leader, so it perhaps was easier for him to recruit, all those disparate Sunni
But
elements.
Israel shouldn't lead this operation. Israel should not be in the upfront. Who the people or the countries who should do it are the moderate Sunni Arab states, like the Emirates, like the Saudis, and of course with the assistance, finance, help, intelligence of America and Israel. But it's possible because the Houthis' grip on the population is deteriorating because of the strikes they are suffering, and of course the horrendous economic structure and horrendous economic. I think Yemen is 150 in the place of the most poorest countries in the world, and this cannot hold for a long time.
I understand. What I was asking though is, do you think there are human intelligence efforts to sort of bring together the Sunni groups in Yemen that are hostile to the Houthis? I mean, we spoke of intelligence efforts, so obviously moving the satellite a few degrees southwest is not a big deal. I'm guessing the bigger issue is actually getting into the country, getting to the people who are perhaps inside, some of the Houthi structure itself to sow discontent, etc. I'm guessing that's the nature of those efforts. So, do you think Israel is in touch with any of them? I don't know even the names of those groups you said that are opposing, apart from the government in Sana'a, the legitimate government, the Sunni. Or are we content with basically striking, the head of the snake, the terror group itself, and hoping that what happens after is going to be for a benefit?
I'm not in the service for quite a few years, so I cannot tell you what is the current situation. But from my experience, my previous experience, I'm quite certain there are negotiations, there are talks, there are all sorts of exchange of information that is being dispersed by Israel through proxies, through intermediators, and so on, in order to conceive what we were talking about.
Okay. I have a question here from a reporter referring to the issue of intelligence sharing that you mentioned before. So we discussed Israel sharing intelligence with its allies and maybe getting intelligence from its allies. Do you think the Houthis on their side are getting higher quality intelligence than what I'm guessing they can gather on their own from powers such as China or perhaps even Russia?
I don't think so. I think, in fact, the Houthis had tried lately to obtain some weaponry and some sort of anti-aircraft facilities from Russia, and Russia had turned them down. I don't think China has any sort of interest in supporting the Houthis directly and indirectly right now. Their sponsor was Iran, but this sponsor is quite weak now and is more concentrated on himself rather than the Houthis. Having said that, I'm not saying the Iranians had detached themselves from the Houthis or vice versa. By the way, the Houthis had never been a real proxy of Iranians because they have their own agenda. It's not like the Hezbollah or the Jihadic Islamic or other one. But I think the Houthis are facing difficulties in reconstruction of their significant military power. And let's not forget, they have a huge army. I mean, it's one of the biggest in the area, but nevertheless, when we are talking about their ballistic capabilities, they are not going, as I see it, in the near future, to upgrade their capabilities.
What do you mean when you say a huge army? Do you mean a large number of infantry?
Yeah, huge
Okay.
number of infantry. You can see just the march that the parade they are demonstrating on each Friday. We are talking about almost 500,000 fighters. Of course, not all of them on the higher or highest standard, but still, it's a huge army.
Yes, I didn't know that. Okay. Finally, disregarding the war in Gaza for now, that the Houthis said they will, stop attacking Israel when the war in Gaza ends. Essentially, we've seen that Israel is striking the Houthis like in a kind of periodical way. It's obviously not an easy task to send jets or even naval vessels so far. So how long can Israel maintain these kind of tit for tat attacks, considering Israel is not going to use its own ballistic missiles, I'm thinking.
We have limited, I would say, amount of resources that we can use against the Houthis, because let's not forget, we have some real major threats in the area. We haven't finished with the Hezbollah, definitely not the Iranians. We have to be on the alert what's happening in Syria and in Iraq as well. So Israel cannot support a long-lasting campaign against the Houthis. And so it is almost essential that the Americans will step in again and be back in the game, because they quit too early, and the coalition as well. Because if we manage to create some sort of international coalition that consists the Americans and the Europeans, as well as the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and of course Israel, I'm absolutely certain that the time will play against the Abd al-Malik and his people, and we can achieve enormous achievements in order to topple this regime.
Okay, thank you for this. I have a couple of questions from journalists. One of them follows up from the chat we had before the webinar started, when I told you that I read an analysis in Haaretz that characterized the people who were eliminated last week, the so-called prime minister, so-called defense minister of what they call the government of change and reformation, I think, as a sort of cardboard cutouts that Abdul Malik can change at will. And you said it's not exactly so. So the question from the journalist is, how important was the elimination of the Houthi leaders in the terms of the functioning of the terror group? How is it likely to affect them? And let me connect it to a second question. If you can answer, basically, how did Israel acquire the intelligence on their whereabouts in Sana'a?
I will start with the second question, which naturally my answer is I don't know. And if I had known, I wouldn't share it. Because
as I expected.
Yeah. And as to the first question, I wouldn't diminish the importance of this government. Yeah, it's not like what we see as European government or the equivalent in the United States or in Israel. No, it's not the case. But nevertheless, all of them were appointed by Abd al-Malik al-Houthi. All of them were close allies and associates with him. And the reason he appointed them is because of this fragile society in Yemen, and in order to maintain some sort of coalition around his family by embracing those people into this sort of coalition. So they are rather important in the level of hierarchy, but I wouldn't say that after this diminishing, the state of Yemen will cease to exist and we are going to see some sort of a chaotic period. No, it's not. But what is more important is the message that Israel had managed to convey to the Houthis. First, what are capabilities? And second, we are going to get after you as well. And this is something that has a very, very much on the psychological level and important.
Okay, thank you very much for this. On Sunday, there were reports, quite large in the Israeli press, that the cabinet meeting, the one during which Netanyahu said that we're going to get to each one of you, was held in an undisclosed secret location for fear of the Houthis retaliating. Now, since then, what we've seen is it's a bit weak, those failed assaults. So can you say why did the government think it needs the cabinet think it needs to be so well protected? Was there any fear of something bigger happening?
We are in a very turmoil period, and you never know what is the black swan. I don't anticipate the Houthis will pull out some sort of a magic trick from the hat that will stun us or will surprise us or will do horrific damage to Israeli interests. I don't think they have those capabilities, but they can definitely cause problems, cause nuances of attacks in on a different model, and especially in the Red Sea. And the reason the cabinet was gathering at some remote place, maybe it's because they were afraid of leaks.
Didn't think about that angle. Really, last question: do you think the strike against the leadership sends a message to other terror groups in the region that they should fear not only for their weapons but only for their own, corporeal bodies, for themselves?
Absolutely, and it follows what Israel had done with Hezbollah, what Israel had done with Hamas, what Israel had done in Iran, and it reflects the will and I would say the motivation of Israel to strike against terror leaders wherever they are, and also it reflects our capabilities. A long arm of Israel can reach 2,000 kilometers and into a special designated place and do whatever it has to do. This absolutely sends a very, very vital and clear message to every terrorist organization, wherever it is.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much for this, Oded. I'm actually certain, the school year started yesterday. I'm actually certain we are going to hear from the Houthis again, even though it's going to be maybe kind of just a nuisance, as it's been over the past months. But it's still, the sirens are not easy to deal with, etc. So, expressing hope that this conflict will one way or the other end soon. Thank you very much for this briefing, Mr. Ailam.
Thank you, Jonathan, for having me.
Thank you.